Update 41, Magicka Nightblade, the ranged variant. I have spent quite a while mulling a couple ideas around in my head, and frankly, I had not settled on just one. I have two options for you all that I hope you'll at least enjoy because one is a little bit more unique, and one of them is a little bit more traditional. They both use the same bar setup, and then I will have a optional variant using a flame staff that I can show you that's also like for dueling. So first things first, a new set came out that many people, predictably so, they DM'd me when they saw it come out. Was like, "Hey, this might be good because I know you like to play ranged Magic Nightblade, so you should look into the set." And I totally did. It's okay. I'm not sure if it's better than War Maiden. I'm not sure if it's even quite on the same level of War Maiden, but it does something different, and I think it's kind of fun, and it looks cool. I mean, just look at the red glow. That's kind of cool. And it does make the main spammable of my choice more effective, that being Swallow Soul. Does more damage, does more healing. It's actually kind of nice. Swallow's healing is no longer just a supplemental thing. It actually feels like kind of a main source of healing when I'm using it. So Soul Carver is what we're going to start with, and then I will go over the more traditional Magblade as well as the dueling setup that I have. So what do I think of Soul Carver? I don't know. I'm going to be perfectly honest. So if we mouse over Soul Carver here, it increases the healing and damage of our siphoning abilities by 18%. I don't think that's high enough. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't think it needs to be much higher in order for the set to actually be like really competitive. I think it needs to be about like 20%. I think when it originally came out on the PTS, it was something like 35%, which honestly, if we got that, I would be saying, yeah, absolutely give Soul Cleaver a try. There is still, no matter what you do, there is going to be a downside to using Soul Cleaver because it's not going to buff your Merciless. And when playing Magicka Nightblade, one of the big things you want to consider is that you want to max out the number of your Merciless. Get that shit as high as you can go. And Soul Cleaver does not affect that the way War Maiden does. So no matter what, in picking Soul Cleaver, you're already giving something up. There is already a choice being made. So giving this a little extra oomph by increasing it to 20%, Zos would be nice, but at 18%, it's still usable. The other thing that I think is really nice is it reduces the cost of your siphoning abilities by 18%. One of the things that I say about Strife is that it costs too much. Strife being Swallow Soul. With this, it does cost a little bit less, makes life a little bit easier, but I still think it costs too much. Alas, this gets me close to where it feels like it would be good. I do notice a lack of damage in this build, and I'm going to go over a little bit about why ranged Magic Nightblade suffers compared to melee Magic Nightblade, which is widely considered as the meta, and I mean, I will make my melee Magic Nightblade video as I always do. But that's a bit of the mechanics for the sets. Rallying Cry is, of course, Yeol reliable. We have one-piece Trainee, two-piece Balrog. You could switch this out to something else. I just think Balrog is cool. It looks cool. It has the red glowing on the hands, which matches Nightblade's aesthetic perfectly, and it performs exceptionally well, so there is no reason not to use it. As for the stats, I have heard a rumor that Zos may intend to remove all damage scaling from max stats. Personally, I think that's a bad idea, but that has not happened yet. And so max mag will actually affect your damage, which is why I have about 26k max mag instead of 24k. I think that's what my melee mag blade has. But I do actually kind of care about my max magic because it does, in fact, add to my damage capabilities. And so you'll see, for some of these, I have added the infused trait to get a little bit of extra max health, max mag, and max stamina. I do not believe infused is worth it unless you're going to use triglyphs. This is a personal choice. Honestly, well-fitted might be better, but I would only use infused on the big pieces, such as legs, helmet, and chest. Although for chest, I'm doing heavy armor reinforced. Never used reinforced on medium or light armor. It is absolutely not worth it. It's a waste of a trait. Only used reinforced on heavy armor or a shield, perhaps. As for everything else, I'm mostly using magic glyphs with a mix of Tristat. I like to have my max stam a little above 17k. It feels comfy, and so that's where that is. Max mag is above 26k, feels good. Max health could be a little bit higher, but honestly, I kind of appall the current meta with max health, so I'm not really going that high. 23k is pretty good, honestly. When I do switch to my front bar because of the very annoying shadow passive, it does go down. Since they're unifying a lot of the stuff that affects both bars. For instance, siphoning attacks got a very big change, which I will go over in a second. Where is it? Dark Vigor, increase max health for each shadow ability slotted by 3%. Can we just make this like 5% for just having an ability slotted? It's really annoying having my health values be different on both bars, and then I feel like this pressure to try and balance it out, even if it just feels awkward and clunky and doesn't work. Yeah, anyways, so that is the sets I'm running. We also have our traditional War Maiden. I switched to a Lightning Staff. There are some cases in which a Flame Staff will also work in case you still have a Flame Staff. Again, you're going to be giving up your ability to get really high Merciless tooltips, but that's okay. As for potions, a lot of people use tripods. You can absolutely do that. I use PvE spell power potions, and it is what I have used on Magic Nightblade in general since about 2017. So it still works. You will notice a little bit of stam fuckery, but honestly, it's mostly fine. I do have Camo Hunter here. If you want to save money on potions, you can absolutely take Power Extraction, put it there. It will rely that you get in melee range a little bit more often though. So War Maiden, of course, is going to be giving us more tooltip damage for Merciless Resolve. Otherwise, the build is basically the same with War Maiden. It's just slightly different. As for the front bar enchantment, I do want to mention it because I'm not totally set on it. I've just been using flame damage because, ooh, fire pretty. You could also use poison, but I do personally recommend a damage over time component because that way you will be able to proc siphoning attacks while not directly engaged in your opponent. You'll have a higher proc coefficient of that. So Ellie Sus will, of course, have proc this occasionally. It is kind of like a damage over time effect, but having a damage over time effect on your main weapon increases pressure as well as just, it makes siphoning attacks proc more, therefore increasing your sustain. You could also just, put a dot on your bar, but I find that Structured Entropy has a tendency to actually expose where you are. I will give a quick demonstration. Because of the animation, look at that. It kind of arcs in the air towards you. You have that little arc. So your enemy doesn't necessarily need detect potions to see you. Of course, they'll need something to pull you out of cloak, but if I'm hiding behind a rock and I put Structured Entropy on someone, it's going to expose where I am. Not the best ability. And so, well, what does that leave us in regards to putting a damage over time effect on our bar? Good old Debilitate is my recommendation for the Morph. Of course, Crippling Grasp works too, but Debilitate is better, especially since they buffed the Overcharge status effect, and, Debilitate mostly applies Overcharged. Frankly, though, Debilitate is kind of ass in PvP, and that is because people tend to dodge, and Debilitate has a very slow travel time, and so anytime someone dodges, it misses all the time. It's quite annoying. So I don't recommend using any dots because they just don't fucking work, which is a little sad. Magic Nightblade, Ranged Magic Nightblade specifically, runs into similar issues that Magic Sorc runs into, is that a lot of your damage is dodgeable. Sorc has Streak and Curse as part of its native toolkits, which aren't really, dodgeable. So it is technically still better at dealing with dodge rollers, but they do both really struggle against roly-polies. So that is something to keep in mind, and that has kind of always been a bit of a weakness, but it's been worse recently because everyone has a lot more stam to work with. Just something to keep in mind. As for food, let's see here. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Jewels of Misrule. Good old Jewels of Misrule. You could use the blue food, or not blue food, the gold food version of this if you have money. I mean, even though I do have some money and I could make more money, I don't want to use that. It feels kind of like a waste. I guess during Midyear Mayhem you could use it if you want. to get, you know, maximum performance, but I'm quite content with where I am, and I think about 1,000 stam recovery is usually fine for what I want to do. Of course, Path will buff our stam recovery by a small margin and our Magicka recovery as well, helping with our dodge roll, block, CC break, etc, etc. Now, moving on to what has changed with this build. Since the last video I posted, I think the last time I posted, I was using a flame staff. I might have used lightning staff, I don't know. I think I gave it a kind of a dearth of time in between because I wanted to examine the performance of Soul Carver before I actually made a video. So I believe the last time I said it was flame staff. Now we're using lightning staff. You can also use flame staff in this build. You know, as I mentioned, I am using a dot, and I hate dots. Specifically crippling. It's really hard to work. But in a duel, when you're kind of close, you're weaving in and out, you can usually get closer, and you can manage to land cripple on your opponent. As for the back bar, I'm unsure if I want to have siphoning attacks here. I think I do. I'm on the fence about it. Or if I want refreshing path. One thing I have noticed as well is that when Healthy Offering, you know, if you're using Soul Carver, Healthy Offering is a siphoning ability, so theoretically it should be affected by it, and it may very well be. But looking at tooltips, I don't see that big of a difference. The cost is absolutely affected, I believe, right? Doesn't show up in the tooltip. Well, even if the cost is affected, the healing does not seem to be affected that much, and if you have a powered back bar staff, then you might as well just have it on your powered bar, because that 9% extra healing is not something to scoff at. So for the front bar is more or less the same: In-Cap Strike, Refreshing Path, Camo Hunter, Shadow Image, Swallow Soul, or you could use Ellie Weapon, which is what I do. I have a Flame Staff and I use Ellie Weapon for this dueling build, because Flame Staff does increase the damage, but also the heavy attack. If you're going to use Flame Staff, you better be heavy attacking every now and then, because that extra dot pressure adds up. But I'm not doing that. I'm using Lightning Staff, and it does actually kind of help with roly-polies, the heavy attack. I have never lightning heavy attacked so much in my life until this patch, because I'm just like, I'm trying to get that last sliver of health as someone's dodge rolling away. Back bar remains unchanged in terms of the skills used. However, the big change that we received is that siphoning attacks is now a lot fucking better. It actually works similar to how siphoning attacks used to work. If you don't know what I mean, back in, I think it was before Morrowind, give or take? I don't know, a while ago, 2017, 2016, siphoning attacks and leeching strikes used to be two very different abilities. Leeching strikes was not a stam morph. It was a health-oriented version of siphoning attacks, and which is what it has returned to now. I think it was also a toggle, interestingly enough, but most people just use siphoning attacks because it gave a lot of resources. Numerically speaking, it gave a lot of resources, but every time you did damage, direct damage, I believe it had a certain chance to proc and return resources, which enabled the sap tanking playstyle, which is basically where people block and they use sap essence, because sap essence heals you, and therefore you can sit there, suck the life out of people, and still regain resources while you're blocking, which I may or may not do a build with later. I'm not very good at tanking because I light attack weave, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to drop block and I'm going to do damage now, and then I just die because I'm not a very good tank player. Alas, siphoning attacks is back in its full glory, and I cannot wait to kill myself with this ability because it costs health. I have a very bad habit of activating siphoning attacks and Merciless Resolve, even though neither ability technically needs activation, because while slotted on either bar, your soul yearns for the warmth of life. All damage you deal restores X amount of health and 200 Magicka and stamina every 1 second. So as long as I'm doing damage every 1 second, I'm getting the benefit out of siphoning attacks, which usually if I'm in combat, I'm doing damage at least every 2 seconds in forms of dots or, direct damage. So this is... optimally, it's going to equal roughly 400 Magicka and stamina recovery. And that's, without considering the regen aspects. So just like the stock stat, if I had to translate that into max mag or max stam recovery, it would just be around 400 recovery. Because recovery happens every 2 seconds, and this is every 1 second, so you just add that, And then, of course, if it was recovery, you would have the percentage modifiers. But we're not dealing with that. It's just the flat 200 mag and stam every 1 second, which is really nice because I finally have off resource sustain again. That means I can dodge roll without feeling like an idiot. It is something I have missed for so long. So I'm quite happy to see this ability get changed. I am also kind of terrified though, because I have a habit of hitting the ability. And so that means I will probably accidentally kill myself by activating it because it cost 4,000 health. Yeah, that's gonna get me killed sometimes. God. Anyways, moving on. Our back bar ultimate is flexible. All the other skills here you've seen are technically flexible. You can do whatever you want with it, but I highly recommend them to stay as is. This offers us a way to deal with cloakers, as well as just, it gives us a little extra damage potential. This is honestly your flex spot. If you have to switch something out for a certain scenario, I would probably switch this out. If you feel like your sustain is fine, then you could take siphoning attacks off, but this allows you to run with lower sustain. Finally, Magicka Nightblade has good sustain again. As the back bar ultimate, this is also a flex spot. In cap, you need in cap, but you could run something different here. You could run Meteor. I know a lot of people use Ice Comet, but I prefer Shooting Star because of the ultimate refund. And if you're fighting a Zerg, you might hit more than one person, so that's a big ultimate refund. But I generally do recommend one of the morphs of this ability, Soul Tether, or I think the other one is Soul Shred, because of the, where is it? The Soul Siphoner passive increases your healing done by 3% for each siphoning ability slotted. This is a pretty big deal when you're in PvP, because your healing is reduced. So having just another ability on your bar just increases the amount of healing you're going to get from both Vigor and Healthy Resolve. If you're new to playing PvP and you're wondering why I'm using Vigor as a magic build, of course, hybridization is a thing, so it will work, but, it's my off resource. Do I really want to use my stamina on healing? Well, yes, because 1, it does a lot of healing, and 2, it grants minor resolve, increasing your spell and physical resistance by around 3,000 for 20 seconds. That is a vital buff that you need to not die in PvP. As is Rallying Cry. Everyone was wondering why you're using Rallying Cry. It's not just a 300 weapon and spell damage, it's also that crit resistance. Crit resistance is important to not dying in PvP. Please wear crit resistance. A lot of PvEers come into PvP and they're like, oh, it's so hard. That's because you're not wearing crit resistance, sweetheart. If you wear crit resistance, you'll have a much easier time. I promise you. It will not carry your ass. You're still going to have to try, but it does make life significantly easier. So the other morph is purely a defensive option, but Soul Tether is a offensive option. Soul Tether has A, gotten me killed, and B, saved my ass. You're wondering, how's it gotten you killed? It doesn't cost any health, unlike good old siphoning attacks or even Healthy Offering over here. Well, let me tell you. Let's say there are 5 people standing around me. 5 people can do a lot of damage in 0.5 seconds. I need to hit Soul Tether so I can stun all of them and heal myself. The heal is okay, the damage is decent. And the fact the damage is decent is why it has that cast time. But the fact that the cast time is longer than in cap is kind of ridiculous. So I'm hitting her, spamming the R key, trying to get it to go off, and then I just die because there's 5 people surrounding me spamming stuns or whatever. And maybe I'm not CC immune, and so that part is technically my fault. But just having to wait half a second to get Soul Tether off is such a pain in the ass. I would much prefer if it was 0.3 or 0.4 seconds. And even then, it's I don't know. You could run Dawnbreaker back here. Honestly, if I run with the group, I will probably run Dawnbreaker back here because the cast time is shorter, the cost is less, and the fact that you do get Slayer, it does increase your healing by a small amount, but not as much as if you were using Tether. So I think Tether is nice, just for the passive, as well as the fact that it does give you options. Optimally, you would be cloaked and then you'd open with Tether, but honestly, if you're going for an offensive thing, you should just be using in-cap. Tether is nice when it comes to deal with roly-polies, though. However, I found its range to be inconsistent. It used to only be 6 meters, and now it's 8 meters, thank fucking God, but yeah, I still have a hard time hitting people because everyone is so fast at the moment. I believe I've covered everything. let's take a look at the CP, because I think that's the only thing that I haven't really covered. CP and, of course, the Mundus. I'm actually kind of between myself for the Shadow and the Thief, or some other Mundus. I'm going with the Shadow for now. I believe it does get us pretty high tooltips. For melee magic Nightblade, the build that I will be posting as well, Shadow is absolutely 100% way to go, but for ranged, you have more flexibility. You could take other things, but I still think the Shadow is technically the best. For our CP, I have Fighting Finesse because, you know, that goes well with the Shadow, plus we have the crit modifier native to playing Nightblade, Duelist rebuff for damage mitigation, Ironclad for damage mitigation, and Master at Arms for, you know, increasing our damage done. You could swap out Fighting Finesse for something of your choice if you want. That is up to you. You know, some of these PvP builds are very personalized, so, you know, do as you would do. Going down to red CP, I have Relentless, Rejuvenation, Fortified, and Pain's Refuge. Pain's Refuge is kind of mandatory. The other ones you can fuck around with if you want. Relentless is just kind of nice. Major Protection used to be more than 10% damage reduction, so when I first put this in, I was like, oh yeah, that looks awesome, but it's actually just 10% damage reduction. Regardless, it's still nice, especially because there have been issues with the game where animations are not showing properly. It does not show that you're stunned. I have actually had to install an add-on to tell me that I am stunned, which I have never ever had to do before. But now too many animations will seem to be trying to play at once, and I'll just be standing there like this. But in reality, I'm stunned and I die. So if you're having that problem in PvP, you might want to install an add-on. What I use is my CC tracker. Maybe I should go over an add-on video. Comment if you want an add-on video, because I know my UI is both clean and cluttered. As for green CP, this does not matter in combat that much. I guess move speed, you know, Gifted Rider is pretty essential in Cyrodiil, as is the auto combat move speed. That helps a lot. But let's be honest, you're going to be stuck in combat when you're in Cyrodiil, so it's not going to be so helpful. I think that covers everything. Yeah. Sharpened front bar, powered back bar. You can always just pause the video and take a look at the smaller text here if you need the specific traits and stuff. I think I've explained everything. One last thing I will leave you with is that to be good with this build, you need to master the use of this ability, Shadow Image. Honestly, to be good at Nightblade, mastering Shadow Image is very important. You can get away with so much bullshit if you know how to use Shadow Image. I wish Shadow Image gave you like 0.2 seconds of invulnerability, because it's kind of funny. I will use Shadow Image in Cyrodiil, I'll run away, and I'm kind of at low health, I'll hit Shadow Image, and because it doesn't absorb projectiles like Streak does, all the projectiles in midair trying to hit me will take a 90-degree turn and hit me through a wall. Little funny, but overall, when Shadow Image works, it is an orgasmically fun skill. You can juke people out. It kind of gives you some passive damage reduction in the form of minor maim, but when you violently are pulled away from someone's crosshair, it does give you damage mitigation by virtue of the fact that they're not attacking you that very second. Questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave it in the description. I will happily go over all of them. If you're on PC and NA and you want help with Magicka Nightblade, or just any class in general, I usually know enough to be able to help you, but of course, Nightblade is my specialty. Feel free to contact me. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good time and enjoy Update 41.